So to get started, I do want to say that I think looking at all the problems in our food system, what we've seen with food waste, especially in the past 2 to 3 years, there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of opportunity. It's a massive problem that we'll hear more about kind of the scale of here shortly. But I do think that there's some important work being done and we're seeing action, really leadership actually from the private sector in many ways. So to get started, I'm going to have my panelists introduce themselves. Elizabeth, can you go first?
Sure. Elizabeth Balkan. I am the Director of Policy in the Commissioner's Office at the Department of Sanitation. I'm also the Executive Director of the Department of Sanitation's official nonprofit, the Foundation for New York's Strongest.
Hi, I'm Katy Franklin. I'm the Operations Manager at ReFed, and we're a nonprofit focused solely on reducing food waste in the U.S.
Hey everybody, I'm Joel Gamoran. I'm the National Chef and Culinary Director for Sur la Table, and I'm the host of a food waste cooking show called Scraps, which you all gotta watch. Check it out.
Is that A&E?
Yeah, A&E. Yeah.
Hi everybody, my name is Madeline Wachtel. I work for the Billion Oyster Project, which is a local restoration and education initiative restoring oysters to New York Harbor. And I run our shell collection program, so we collect oyster shells from 70 restaurants in Manhattan and Brooklyn and reuse them for restoration purposes.
Hey everyone, my name is Robert Lee. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. We're a nonprofit that brings leftover food to home shelters using a crowdsourced Ruby on Rails application.
I realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is Ariel Lauren Wilson. I'm the editor of Edible Manhattan and Edible Brooklyn. So anyway, awesome. So to get started, Elizabeth, can you give us an idea, first off, like really generally the scope of the food waste problem, like along the whole supply chain, and then kind of bring in some statistics specific to New York if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Katy can also chime in on some of the sort of nationwide statistics, but what we know is that organic matter, organic waste, which includes food scraps and also plant and yard waste, food, soil, paper, is about a third of what's in our waste. That makes it the largest single component of our waste. And that's true both on the residential side and the commercial side. The Department of Sanitation manages residential waste, and so we are aggressively expanding our organics collection program, which is our sometimes known as our compost program, to collect those food scraps and make sure that they are diverted from landfill and turned into compost or renewable energy. But the residential side is only half of the equation. So the commercial side is really a major area for in need of scaling up food waste solutions, both in terms of the diversion of food scraps for compost, but also working up the waste management hierarchy towards food rescue, food donation, and food waste prevention. But overall, when you're talking about a third, it's over 650,000 tons on the commercial side alone. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around those numbers. Each truck that you see, each garbage truck you see driving around the city is anywhere from, say, 12 to 15 or 18 tons. So that starts to give you an idea of just how much waste is generated, food waste is generated on the commercial side as well as the residential side in New York.
Yeah, and could we have a scope nationally? I know there's some figures that maybe some people in this audience have heard. Do you want to shed some light on those, Katy? Yeah.
So nationally, we waste about 63 million tons of food, and that's from the farm all the way to the landfill, like Elizabeth was talking about. And the majority of that actually happens in our consumer-facing businesses. So about 43% of that food waste occurs at retail, restaurant, food service, or your universities, hospitals, etc. And then another 40% is from us when we're eating at home. And there's a little bit of crossover there between what we might bring home from a restaurant. And a lot of the causes of that are driven just one by lack of awareness. Some of it has to do with valuing the cost of our food and the resources that go into it. So along with all this food that's wasted, we're wasting about 20% of fertilizer, cropland, energy, water, and then a whole mess of labor, financial inputs. We're producing close to 20% of our greenhouse gases just from food waste. And so there are a lot of opportunities to address food waste, and Elizabeth alluded to this, but kind of the higher up in the food chain that we can stop it, the quicker that we can conserve those resources. And
By higher up, do you mean like closer to the field?
yes,
Okay.
thank you. So closer to the field, and then also thinking about prevention, recovery, recycling. So if you prevent the food waste, you prevent all of those bad things from happening. Recovery is a fantastic way to keep food in the food chain for people. And then recycling is still incredibly valuable, recycling food scraps into compost, creating energy through anaerobic digestion, and animal feed. There's some really fun things happening in the animal feed space, and really just making sure that we capture all those nutrients and bring them back home.
Does anybody have anything else to add there? Maybe Joel, you've traveled the country to see the scope of stuff. Do you want to talk a bit more about the scale of the issue you've seen before we shift to talking about opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, the scale is startling. I mean, it's scary. That 1 out of 8 people say they go to bed hungry in America, and meanwhile we have all of this food waste that's our biggest contributor to emissions, methane emissions. I mean, it's insanity. And so I don't think it's on the radar of chefs. I know it's not on the radar of home cooks. And one thing you guys were talking about around prevention is just from an industry standpoint, some chefs, raise your hand if you're a chef or someone who cooks for a living. A couple people, okay. You were taught in culinary school to use every last scrap, because if you didn't, your restaurant would go under. Every ingredient could be something that you can sell on the plate. But we were never really taught that as home cooks. And so as an awareness issue, home cooks, it's just not on their radar. We did a poll where about 50% of people said it is interesting to them to know more about food waste, so that's about half of people are actually interested. And then we did a poll that said 99% of people didn't realize it was a huge issue. They just thought it was like compost is compost, and they didn't realize that when this goes into a landfill, it's actually really bad for the environment. So the scale is huge and the lack of awareness is huge, and so just finding outlets to reach the home cook has really been my focus, but I think it's a monster undertaking, but something very approachable and doable.
Cool. And I'd be curious to hear from Robert and you too, Maddie. In terms, you do collection, Robert, from like different events around the city. Maybe you regularly have businesses you're collecting from. Can you talk about the scale of what you know is out there, and then what Rescuing Leftover Cuisine actually captures?
Sure. Yeah, we do both kind of predetermined pickups as well as ad hoc kind of on the fly pickups as well. And we see all different types of food waste. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate to think that every single restaurant has at least some form of food waste at the end of the night when they're closing. And it's, over 300, a ton of different restaurants across the city. And then at the same time, we're looking at events that have gigantic, piles of pallets and pallets of food waste from events from pop-up stores that are open and closing, as well as warehouses, distribution points. And it's just startling to think that there's so much food going to waste throughout just one city. And
that's mostly prepared foods too, right? That you
food
collect.
as well,
Yeah.
and some raw ingredients and things like that, but mostly prepared food. So yeah, we've been dealing with a lot with the restaurant side of the side of the market, and a lot of the kind of distribution and retail ends, but it's just enormous, and sometimes it's just overwhelming. But it's just kind of taking it one by one and taking it day by day, and just focusing on what we do best, and working with others to help the overall kind of collective effort against food waste.
Yeah, and Maddie, kind of the scale of the shell collection that you do too.
Sure. Yeah. So right now we're working with about 70 restaurants, as I said, in Manhattan and Brooklyn. And we're a little unusual in the fact that we are looking to collect one really, really specific food scrap, which is an oyster shell, right? And it's really fantastic working with chefs. They all really appreciate the fact that we want to clean up their local backyard, and showing them the reuse of this one shell's potential is really our sweet spot. So just to elaborate a little bit, one oyster shell can be the home for up to 20 new baby oysters, right? So if you're a diner eating at Gramercy Tavern, actually, quick shout out, all the restaurants participating in this event are shell collection program partners. which is great. But so, you know, one diner eats a dozen oysters at a restaurant. That's 24 shells. Multiply that by 20, that's 480 potential baby oysters, you know, going back into New York Harbor. So showing them that potential outcome has really been, a big motivator for our chefs.
And how many restaurants do you work with throughout the city?
70.
70?
Yeah.
Okay. So shifting from talking about kind of like the massive scale of what we're dealing with here, I want to hear more about the opportunities where we have. And I know that Katy specifically, like your job, you're focusing on different businesses across the country, right? Like specifically the United States, correct? Yes. So could you highlight for me some bright points that you see there? Yeah, Mike.
So I could talk about this a few different ways. So one of the fun projects that REFED has done is building an innovator database. And it's just like what it sounds, a database of over 430 nonprofit and commercial entities who are capturing opportunity from food waste. And I actually think both of you guys are in there. And it includes folks who are doing creative things to prevent food waste on farm, all the way down to hauling efficiency software. So a really wide range of things. And I think what really gets us excited are the ones who are leveraging technology in really smart and creative ways. And they're often pulling in not necessarily new ideas, but old ways of doing things, digitizing them, and then really making an impact. So one example is Blue Cart. They are effectively digitizing the procurement process for restaurants. Our food supply chain is just incredibly antiquated when you think about it in comparison to others. And so any opportunity to digitize some of the transactions or the communication that's going on, one, it streamlines it, it eliminates the opportunity for errors. It also helps people see trends more quickly. So if you have your procurement system set up and you are tracking and ordering through that, it's a lot easier to see, we ordered 4 cases of tomatoes, but we've really only been using 2 the past 2 weeks, so let's adjust. And you can make smarter, more informed decisions that way. And then it's also a huge opportunity to collect data. At REFED, we are data driven, and so anything we see where we get to collect more data, we get excited by it. And then also we work pretty deeply with major food businesses around the country, so retailers, food service providers, and restaurants, and they are getting very excited by these innovations as well. We've seen Walmart pick up some creative ways of delivery services and even being really inventive in how they're quantifying their greenhouse gas emissions. They're thinking about things like date label standardization and actually making commitments and pushing forward on these things. So from the little guys to the big guys, everyone is picking up on this. Like, you're right, there's a ton of momentum out there.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think there's been like this sea change, it seems like to me, and I can open that up to all of you. It seems like it's happened very quickly to me.
You're right, it has happened pretty quickly. And I think part of it is a lot of great research has come out in the past few years. So if you think back to 2012, Dana Gunders at NRDC produced the Wasted Report, and I think for a lot of us that was like our first entree into the topic. And NRDC has put out several other great reports. John Hopkins has been doing a lot of research at the consumer level and kind of doing a collection and aggregation of all the policies out there. And I think and then the roadmap came out in 2016, shout out to ourselves, that was an economic analysis of the entire food waste system. And I think what that research has done is shown people, one, that this is solvable, and then 2, that it's financially viable. So for someone like a Walmart or an Aramark, they have a huge profit potential. Overall, food service has a $2 billion profit potential by reducing food waste in their operations. Like, their business is food, so why not be more efficient?
Why has it taken until now, though, for people, do you think, to like start thinking about that? Were they just operating their businesses expecting this to be like part of doing business?
Yeah, I think it's been considered a cost of doing business, and like so many other aspects of waste management or your waste stream, it's very easy to not see it, right? It's very invisible. In fact, the way we think about our waste in general is to just try to get it away from ourselves as quickly as possible, as simply as possible, without a lot of thought. And the reason why people resist looking at their food waste or looking at their waste is because it's very complicated to manage. It's also very unpleasant. And I think so the issue with food waste in particular, it's not that it's new, it's been around for quite some time. But it is now becoming impossible to kind of look away from it. I also think, obviously for businesses, if you're at all conscious about your costs and looking for ways to reduce your operational costs, this is, one of the lowest hanging fruits.
Yeah. I actually think it was in the 1860s when New York started separating organic material. So yeah, definitely not new.
Yeah. I want to shift a little bit to something you said, Katie, of talking about, when we talk about technology, what we actually mean. Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we're seeing from different areas that the technology we're talking about is not necessarily that sophisticated. So a great example to me, I think, is actually rescuing leftover cuisine, because the way I see you all, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is essentially just using digital communication to coordinate, like, hey, there's like this prepared food here that's perfectly edible, right? That legally we're allowed to pick up. So like, why not have a messaging service to like quickly get volunteers nearby, get it, and get it to a pantry? Like, it just seems so
Yeah,
obvious,
that's exactly
which
right.
is great.
Yeah, it's super easy. I mean, and then that, I think, I guess it's just, people are thinking about like, crowdsourcing, like transportation, like Uber and things like that. And I think people are now starting to think about food waste, and it's not just us. I mean, we are focusing on restaurants, but there are people doing it for schools and colleges, people doing it for, offices and catering companies. And so I think, the reports and everything really help in getting people to start thinking about food waste as a resource rather than something to just get rid of. And I think it doesn't have to be tremendously difficult. I'm not a developer. I'm not from a developing background. I'm not a coder or anything like that. But tech is so core to what we do. It allows everyone, literally anyone, to go to a website and sign up online to actually transport food and be the crowdsourced transportation solution for the excess food rather than going to waste. So the potential is huge.
Yeah, and again, Maddie.
Oh yeah, if I can add on to that, we're also relatively low tech, right? We're just collecting oyster shells. But what you said about digital communications, for us, that's huge. So what we've started to do, we're also kind of data nuts. We track every single collection weight from every single pickup from every single restaurant. And what we've done is we've created a digital dashboard for every single restaurant so that they can kind of live track their progress. And it's really, really helped them to be both enthusiastic about what they're doing, but also to kind of catch their teams when maybe they start throwing out their shells by accident. Because it's really hard for a restaurant business to track every single time they're throwing something out. But if they're just looking at a really simple chart, they can see, oh wait, why are we down 200 pounds from last week? And it's relatively simple technology, but it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, on the simple technology thing, so first of all, favorite movie in the world is Back to the Future. I don't know who's with me on that. But I don't know if you guys remember Doc Brown coming back at the end of season 1, and he had Mr. Fusion, which was like this blender-looking thing on the back of the DeLorean, and he was collecting like banana peels and tomato scraps, and he was like shoving it in. He's like, I gotta get back to the future. Was that 1 or 2? I don't know. They all run together. But
It's your favorite movie.
it is my favorite movie. But bottom line is, it's been on our scale that tech and food waste has actually been kind of a mainstream thing. We know it's the answer in a lot of ways to this problem. I mean, in Korea right now, they're weighing all residential food waste. It's by law that if you have food scraps, it has to go in this special garbage container that has a scale in it, which is not super high tech, but then you get taxed on that weight. So the more
How
you
long
waste.
have they had the system? Has it just been?
I think it's been 3 years, 7 years,
Okay.
but they've reduced all of their food waste in landfills. It's gone.
90% diversion.
Yeah, it's,
I think they've achieved, they have this very robust zero waste framework that they're implementing, and I think already, I'm not sure, but they've reached a very high percentage, very high recycling rate or diversion rate, like 90%, something like that.
Not to get too far, like I want to talk about that a bit more, but like what are they doing once they collect the waste? I want to talk a bit more about what New York City has planned for their waste, but where are they taking that? I want to get back to the low tech point because I have some questions for you, Joel, but just to finish that thought about what we're seeing out of South Korea.
Yeah, I can't speak to South Korea, to Seoul specifically in terms of whether they're using anaerobic digestion or compost or a combination. I would imagine a combination of both. AD is very widespread in Europe, so that's kind of the norm. and they've had bio-waste or organic waste diversion programs in place for 30 years. But I think those are some of the high-tech solutions, or those are more of the infrastructure pieces of the equation. I think what excites me more, where I see this huge potential with innovators and entrepreneurs and other platforms, is just it's not a tech-facing solution. It's a people-facing solution. It's a human intelligence solution. Where the technology comes into play is really in the connections and facilitating, enabling a software-driven donation program to effectively optimize resources around transportation and identifying outlets. And that's really what we've been trying to do at the Department of Sanitation, is look to all the different players and help bring them together in a collaborative fashion, because you really need to have this connectivity. Otherwise, you can have a million great innovators, but if they don't have a place to connect with, then the solutions aren't going to be unlocked.
Yeah, the power of that data that you were talking about, Katie, in terms of refed being really like fueled by that, I guess. But getting back to kind of the lower tech thoughts, I would be curious to hear, Joel, like when you think about food wasting tech in the home kitchen, right? Like, what comes to mind there? What does that look like?
It's so funny you say that, because I'm actually right now literally helping launch the Guestimator that Ad Council and NRDC is putting out, which is a calculator online for home cooks. You just go onto adcouncil.com, savethefood.com, and you put in what your menu is going to be for that night, and it tells you the exact amount you should buy so you don't over-waste food. And there's so many different materials on there about giving people that outlet. So check it out, savethefood.com. So that to me is a really approachable, low-tech win for the home cook, where it's something that I feel like anyone could use. My mom could use it, and she barely knows how to use her cell phone. And she could figure out how to, save food, not overbuy, and of course, fight the fight.
And does it give you also, I'd be curious to hear, does it give you ideas or inspiration for what you might do, say, if you have leftover kale stems or, cauliflower leaves, for example?
Exactly, yeah. So the Guestimator does not, but the website itself has an insane amount of that. And, that's what people need. They don't know what's safe to eat and what's not to eat. I don't know if you guys know, but cherry pits are incredibly delicious when you infuse them in teas and in syrups for dessert. They have this almond, beautiful kind of toasty, nutty flavor. And so people don't realize, cherry pits, you can eat those things. That can be in your desserts. So those types of resources are the lo-fi ways. Could there be an app where you type in cherry pits and there's a million different options? Yes, that's a lo-fi win. So I just think home cooks need to be able to feel good and safe about what they can eat, because these are new ingredients. Kale stems, a lot of people don't know that you can even eat kale stems. A lot of people don't know what kale is, believe it or not. And so, really taking it down to that elementary level where you tell people these are safe to eat, these are delicious to eat, and there's lots of options around them.
So using tech as an educational tool here, right?
Exactly, and an inspirational tool, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have just a few more minutes before we transition into questions, so get those ready. But I want to talk a bit about, as New Yorkers, what's available to us now as we're trying to make this transition to becoming a zero-waste city. So Elizabeth, I know that the Department of Sanitation just launched a microgrant program. Can you speak to that a bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we kicked off with an event this summer in July called the Food Waste Fair, the New York City Food Waste Fair. It was the first of its kind. It brought together over 1,000 folks from mostly food service and other food-related businesses. We had over 75 exhibitors, among them Billion Oyster Project and Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. And we had tons of workshops and great panels. But what our takeaway from that was that the businesses and the folks that came out to get information and resources were absolutely starved for this kind of information. They were ready to act. They were either already doing something phenomenal, or they were so excited about the opportunity and lacking just that little extra push, that little extra incentive or resource that could help them really activate some of these solutions and put a phenomenal plan into action. So what we've done since the Food Waste Fair is line up and launch. As of yesterday, we just launched the microgrant program. This is a incentive program for mostly small and medium-sized local businesses You can apply for grants up to $2,000 as a single business. If you work with other businesses, that money can be extended to $5,000. On top of the actual funding, we're bringing together lots of resources from the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute and some of our other partners that are bringing things like waste audit services, troubleshooting with organics diversion, training for your staff, so all these kind of soft things, some of them tech related, but together any one business is able to get up to $15,000 of a package, microgrant package. And this is something we're extremely excited about because it's a way that we're going to help businesses get a leg up and really get something going that's incredible. And we know that they are already waiting and ready to put a lot of these solutions into effect. And so we're hoping with this program that we can give them that resource to get something going, which is really scalable, and then look at them and see what happens, see where there's success, see where there are challenges, and figure out from this test case what can be scaled and what the city can do to kind of continue to make further progress and also be a model for other cities around the country and around the world.
So as that rolls out, does the Department of Sanitation have a plan to document that as it's happening to highlight what different people are doing with their grant funding so that it can be shared potentially? Or is there any, I'm just thinking of, as a journalist, like how might we spread the word about what's being seen as being effective?
Absolutely. Like ReFed, we love data. And there's a phrase, you can't manage what you don't measure. So measurement is really crucial, and we're going to be tracking businesses and asking them, we're going to be looking for businesses that are applying for funding to be able to demonstrate how they're going to measure their performance. And this is really critical because we think that if you are a business that's looking to do composting alone, when you start doing that, you realize, oh, I'm throwing a lot of stuff into the compost bin that shouldn't be there in the first place. And that's how businesses start doing donation. Or that's how they start looking at procurement and thinking about how they can buy more effectively and, given limited storage space, prevent food waste from happening. So the tracking part is absolutely critical for businesses to not only be able to report back to us and say, look, we diverted this many tons or we reduced this many tons, but to actually be able to start thinking about the potential to do much more. So that's really critical. We're also going to be really following the grantees very closely and working with them to document their successes through videos, through case studies. These are resources we will make available on our website, foodwastefair.nyc. There's already a lot of great videos on there of businesses in New York City that are doing phenomenal things. So I encourage you to check it out. But what we hope is to take those, dozen videos that we have now, and in a year's time have several dozen more, and to be able to show all kinds of businesses, small and large, from restaurants to bodegas to food wholesalers that are maximizing their operational efficiency while simultaneously fighting food waste.
Yeah. And just to close before we go into questions, I know as an individual, I'm always wondering what I can do in my own kitchen, even though I'm too educated on this topic by now and whatever, there's still things I realize I'm missing at home that I could do on my own or just how I live my life. If you could all just give I'm sure people ask you all the time, being professionals in this space, what they can do, kind of a takeaway point before we go into questions. Does anyone have anything to add that you would just say for your average citizen, what can they do?
So something easy to do to help you start to become aware of if and how much food you're wasting, keep your receipt, stick it on your fridge, and as you throw stuff out or it spoils, just highlight it. And then before you go shopping next time, look at that and then you'll see, oh, and it's kind of the same concept.
Do you do that?
I used to, but I've gotten really good at it now. But that's an easy way. And then you can also see how much money you're wasting. And a lot of times that's more valuable to us than the bell pepper itself. And then on the topic of bell peppers, just a lot of things can be frozen. And SaveTheFood.com has an incredible list of foods that can be frozen. Other than celery, just about everything. And you can chop things up, freeze it, and it's delicious later. So use your freezer.
Yeah, it's a good one. I would also say, before you start cooking, think about all the resources and cool companies that are coming out that you guys can support. So for example, Rise, right? I have a big amount of flour from Rise. Rise takes all this spent grain from beers, right? And all these companies that make beer and all the grain that comes from making the beer usually just gets tossed. But they dry the grain out and then ground it into flour, into beer flour. And it's unbelievably fragrant. It completely changes the game when it comes to your baking. So look for some of these really cool companies and demand them from your grocery stores and say, hey, I heard about this really cool health bar called Regrained, or this beer called Toast, which uses stale bread to make beer.
After those type.
What's that?
They're here.
They're here. Okay, go try it.
Companies that are doing cool stuff are here. So.
Yeah, so support those. I would say that everyone can support those and start finding these companies, because they're popping up like hotcakes, and the more we support them, the more we'll see them.
I'll divert a little bit from just food waste, but maybe paying attention more to the packaging that your food is coming in. That's something that I personally started to do. Trying to bring a tote bag to the grocery store, right? Or even better, maybe like a green market. That's one way to reduce a lot of container waste.
And I would imagine also, having talked to the Billion Oyster Project before, one of the things that's really stuck with me that I've heard from your organization is that if you think about all the trash you see on the streets of New York City, that inevitably ends up in the harbor, and you see it there if you go closer to the water. So keep that in mind too, right? When you toss something in a bin that doesn't have like a bag in it or something, if it could go out of that, it could just end up in the water,
Or
essentially.
You're gonna buy
Yeah,
peaches, that are, you can pick from a box, or peaches that come in, a plastic container. Maybe go for the ones that are loose that you can put in a tote bag.
For myself, I actually I just have a rule to never shop when I'm hungry, because I end up buying way too much. But other than that, you can sign up online on our website, rescuingleftovercuisine.org, and find our events calendar under our volunteer section, and actually just volunteer 30 minutes on your way home or after work, whatever works for your schedule in your area. So that would be really easy to help out.
Elizabeth, do you want to plug the brown bins?
I will definitely plug the brown bins. Also, Katie stole mine, which is the freezer is your friend. No, but it's a good one. And I would say what I often say at these things, which is throw away your trash can. I know that sounds crazy, and I can tell you it will lead to marital problems. But what you do when you...
Did you throw away your trash can?
We threw away our trash can several months ago. We're still married. It's okay. But what that does is when you have this huge trash can in your kitchen or in your apartment with a huge bag, it's very easy to put things in there. It's like the reverse sorting mechanism. And we like to sort things otherwise, right? We are in this phase of organizational maximizing your organizational capabilities. But when it comes to trash, we like this kind of anti-sorting mentality. But that's obviously very detrimental to the planet. I also think it's pretty gross to have a week's worth of food waste and other waste in your apartment if you're trying to avoid problems with roaches and other pests. So I say throw away your trash can. What will happen is you will realize, firstly, how much of what's in your waste stream can be recycled, how much can be diverted for organics. So if you're not enrolled in our program, in our organics collection program, get enrolled if it's in your neighborhood. If you're a building, you can pester your property management company or your super to get enrolled. Every building, every high-rise that's part of our organics program can get enrolled. Every high-rise, every building in Manhattan can get enrolled. You just have to make enough of a fuss and get your neighbors on board with that. And if you're not able to get into our organics program, you can drop off your food scraps at the green market. But what you find, as I said, is that so much of your waste is recyclable or compostable. And what you'll find when you throw away your trash can is that the amount of material that cannot be either composted or recycled through our program might be able to be eliminated, right? So that might be things like packaging, like plastic bags, unnecessarily large volumes of plastic bags that you get at the supermarket, because when you tell them I don't want a bag, they just ignore you. Those bags end up in that big trash can. If you don't have one, you actually might reduce the amount of plastic bags you have. And you might find that some things that are ending up in the brown bin really shouldn't be there. They should have been frozen. You could have given it to a neighbor. You could have done any number of things. So that's my final bit of advice: is throw away your trash can. Maybe don't throw it away. Maybe put it in a closet in case things get really dicey. But really try to avoid it, because if you right size the receptacles in your household for the according to the amount of stuff that should be in each container, you'll find that your trash, the actual amount of landfill waste, is less than 20%, probably even less than that. In our household, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks to fill a small supermarket plastic bag. So, and that stuff's all really stable and it doesn't attract pests, and so that would be my advice.
Yeah, and there's also, just to make my own plug, a story on Edible Brooklyn right now that has to do with if you don't have a brown bin, what you can do, how you can find out if it's coming to your neighborhood, a map, a resource for where you can drop off if you want to do that. So anyway, that said,
I know some chefs who have done the exact same thing, and it works really well in the restaurant setting too.
oh, nice, good. Do we want to open it for questions? And we had a problem yesterday with people not being able to hear it. So if you could like.
So I have a question for so you said you don't have a trash. You throw away your trash can 2 months ago. So how are you managing your waste, and how is that affecting your purchasing behavior?
So he asked how now that you've thrown away your trash can, how are you managing your waste, and how does it affect your purchasing behavior?
Yeah, so I mean, we buy a lot in bulk, so we don't really have a lot of the a lot of what is actually landfill waste that you can't really avoid is stuff that is associated with packaging. So buying in bulk, one thing that we found, for example, was the hothouse cucumbers that come wrapped in plastic. I love the way they taste, but I don't like the plastic. I also don't like plastic touching my food. So when I threw away my trash can and I started noticing these little cucumber wrappers all over the countertops, I said, do I really need these cucumbers? I think they come from England or somewhere. And I started buying them at the local green market, right? So then you're actually doing two things. You're avoiding that plastic waste, and you're also supporting local farmers and eating fresh, more seasonal cuisine.
Other question? I'm going to come around with my microphone because I want people to be able to hear the questions. So I'll come this way and make my way back.
Thank you. Question, I guess, directly for Elizabeth. I wonder if you could speak about the Zero Waste School Initiative and how we can sort of work on regulations so that schools can donate to food pantries and other programs. And I guess another question for Joel: what did you think of food waste of Wasted, the movie?
Great question. We have over 700 public schools and private schools in the city are part of our Zero Waste Schools initiative. This is a really comprehensive effort to not only transform the way that waste is handled on the back end within schools and the management, janitorial management of schools, but also really to dovetail that with curriculum aimed at students that is teaching the younger generation about the importance of recycling and composting. It's no surprise that if you want to get New Yorkers to change their behavior, you should teach the kids, because the kids are the ones that go home and then say, like, Mom, why aren't you putting this banana peel in the brown bin? That's the way we do it at school. So that is a really powerful tool. It's also really important that we have strong Department of Education support on that. The Department of Sanitation has been really gung-ho in trying to get schools to zero waste, and it is something that we cannot do on our own. We absolutely need Department of Education support from the leadership all the way down to make that happen.
Wasted, the movie. Raise your hand if you've seen it. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I thought it was great. So if you don't know what it is, Anthony Bourdain created a documentary about food waste. It's on iTunes now. I watched it the day it came out. And I thought it was amazing. I mean, up until that point, I was about 3.5 years into building Scraps, the show that I'm in. So I've done a ton of research, but even after watching that, I was blown away by a lot of the numbers, and so I learned a ton. Wasted by Dan Barber. I don't know if you guys have heard of that program, but Dan Barber teams up with the best chefs in the world, London and New York, to come up with menus from wasted ingredients in restaurants. It's a lot about that, and I think that what I try and do is sometimes food waste can feel very foodie. And there's parts of the documentary where they were eating like, testicles and intestines, and they're like, don't let it go to waste. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, that's hardcore. And I'm a chef, and so I think that there's a place and time for it, and I think it's aimed at a certain type of person, but I really think it's an amazing documentary. I think Bourdain did it again, and he just kills it. So I would recommend it to everyone.
And I'll just add on to that, I also love the movie, and I thought one staggering statistic, I'm not going to remember it exactly, but they essentially said how long it would take a head of lettuce to decompose in compost. It's like multiple years,
20
right?
years.
20 years. And I was like, if we could all get more research and statistics on how long each type of produce was going to take to decompose, we would be a lot better about rescuing it, giving it to a neighbor.
And by compost, you mean in landfills, actually, right? Because
Yeah.
20 years in a landfill.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Right, to just decompose without help. So yeah, if we could have more research on that, maybe you guys could. That would be great.
Yeah.
Hi, I've got a question for everybody. How can I recycle my wine corks, please?
Make wreaths. No, I'm just kidding.
Can I answer that one? I actually started working with the Building Oyster Project because I wanted to figure out how to recycle wine corks. Cork is it's an incredible substrate. It's a CO2 sequesterer. You actually never cut down a cork tree in order to use it. You just shed it like a sheep. It's a really amazing substrate. There are organizations in the country now. One is called Recork. There are many more. Look them up. I think Whole Foods actually collects corks. You're going to have to pester some of your local Whole Foods to actually tell you where their bin is to put those corks in it, but they should all be collecting it.
And I would just add to that, like ask wherever you're buying wine, ask them if you can bring it back. I think as consumers, we don't do enough. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, someone said, are you asking where your fish comes from when you go buy it? People would say no, and now that's like crazy, right? Because you expect to know where your food comes from. But don't be shy about asking, restaurants if they're doing a good job of maximizing their food, and don't be afraid to ask your, local wine seller, can I bring back my cork? Can I bring back my bottle? Because these folks have they have a responsibility as well and a role to play, and to help you as consumers do the right thing.
Does anybody else have anything to add, since that was the whole panel? We actually have a question from the live stream, and then I'll come up to you. I've ignored that side of the room, I'm sorry.
Just a quick one for the panel. Any tips, resources, or tactics if you or in your hometown want to be an advocate for food waste and get a business or somebody to start looking at their waste stream?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of resources out there already. The foodwastefair.nyc is just one resource for businesses. But Refed has a ton of information on their website, Save the Food as well. So I would definitely look to see what's online to get you started, and talk to your either local city council members or local sanitation department, other city agencies about what they're doing, to see what can be where you can plug into existing initiatives. And then I would just say, do what you do and be, a food waste warrior in your own capacity. Because I think when people see others in their community doing this, number one, it gets people really excited. That's the great news about food waste, is like the solution is really fun and it's really awesome. And it's not like cutting down your greenhouse gases by, switching to a bike and blah, blah. Biking is great, but like, there's so much around like the environmental movement and solutions that are like, seem like a sacrifice. And I guess what I feel like is with food waste, you're not sacrificing anything. You're getting more, and you're getting more flavor, you're getting more food, and you're getting more connected with your food systems. And if you really can't find anyone locally, like, go talk to some farmers, right? Or go to a compost facility. They're everywhere, and find out, plug into that community, because typically there's a pretty close link between composting and farmers and good food.
I'd also add, so Refed has an innovator database and a food waste policy finder. And those are kind of two places you can go, and you can search the database by city and go, see who's in New York, you can see who's in Dallas, Texas. And those innovators really do range in stage of growth, and most of them are going to be super jazzed if you get in touch with them and say like, hey, I'm Katy, I live in your city and I want to do something. And they're going to have ideas for you. They're going to know who to get you connected with. City council members are a fantastic place to start as well. A lot of cities are incorporating zero waste into their waste management strategies, and they want to see their constituents get excited about it. And so even just stepping up and say like, hey, I'll come join your roundtables and give you my ideas as a consumer. And then also even going to the places where you procure your food. So go to your grocery store, no matter how big or large it is, and talk to them about it, because they do have an incredibly large role to play, and they not only can reduce waste in their operations, but they can influence entire supply chains. The opportunity to tweak something at the retail level that has an effect all the way back to farmers in a positive way is just really powerful, and it's real, it's there. So I think probably the takeaway is, don't be afraid to talk to people, and stay excited about it.
So one more question. We're running about 15 minutes behind, but we'll do this and then we'll wrap things up.
Thank you. I had a question, I guess, mainly for Refed about Department of Health rules. I mean, I know they lead to a lot of packaging waste. I try and take my reusable container back to the store to get my lunch put in it again. Some places do, but I know it's illegal. I'm wondering if you're doing any work looking at Department of Health rules and how they increase both wasted food, like buffet trays, what systems being in it, and packaging.
And that's a great question, and Robert, you can probably speak to this a little bit as well. So in the US, at the federal level and in several states, and you can actually see these in the policy finder, there are protections for donations, and those were recently made permanent. There's a Food Recovery Act that's been submitted to Congress right now that would actually expand those even further, but there's a Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act and the PATH Act, and the Bill Emerson Act was passed in '96, so this isn't new, that protects anyone donating food that is wholesome and without any malintent. They're protected from civil and criminal liabilities. There are also tax incentives that a lot of people don't know about or don't leverage as much as they could, that could help offset the costs of working with a provider, hiring folks to take their food.
But within the restaurant itself, you can't necessarily reuse the food if you have a spoon in it, or you can't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we really have to look at the specific scenarios there. I mean, at the end of the day, it all does have to comply with what is passed by Department of Health and need to be safe. And I don't know if you have any thoughts here too.
Sanitation and the EPA are actually working with Department of Health in New York right now to take existing rules and either revise them or just make them more clear for restaurants that wish to use customers' containers for serving food. So right now, I think it's only Just Salad if the outlet named Just Salad. If you take your own bowl, and they sell bowls, then they will serve you salad in that bowl. So there's precedent, it is happening. Most businesses don't attempt it because they're afraid they're gonna get dinged on their health rating. But if you introduce a system where you can ensure that there's no cross-contamination, in other words, you have to use a separate bowl for mixing and separate tongs and all of that, then you as a business can absolutely use a customer's container to serve food so that you can avoid a disposable container. And so that's something we're working with health on, not only to address any rules that might be discouraging businesses from doing this, but also getting the word out to more businesses. So if you are, if you are frustrated by disposable takeaway waste, then definitely ask businesses what they're doing and if they're aware that they can actually introduce a system to use reusable containers.
Cool. Well, thank you all for a very informative panel. If you could give them a round of applause. Like I said, if you have conversations